Good morning and welcome to Q Corner. This is a Q review requested by papavero. His game against Go Let's Go. This was requested yesterday, but hey, we don't always get things the same day. And we're going to jump right into it then, just like we have for Q Corner. We are focusing on beginner games, so we're looking at around 10Q all the way down to 30Q or 35Q, depending on the scale that we're all going by now. We're just looking to try and see what the common mistakes are by the double-digit Q levels and see if we can get them all to correct it and get everybody up to an SDK or even 10 level, which would be absolutely fantastic. So this is just your classic opening, 3 4s and 4 4s. This is all going to be a matter of preference, whatever you play. I would just recommend research as deep as possible. Uh, for 4-4 openings, can't say it is better than 3-3. It's just going to be how well you read over it. So from here, nice and classic. Uh-oh. Let's try this. From a beginner standpoint, I would say stick with something just a bit more simple. What we're looking at here is we get a nice bit of territory on both sides. Black gets a little down here, white gets a little down here. This will leave white with Sente, so white can just jump in anywhere else that they want. Okay, so with Sente, just take your choice. You can invade corners, jump in, make a nice Shamari, expand back over here. It's really up to you. I don't want to get too deep into direction of play when it is going to come to beginner players like this. I know beginners are always eager to learn that much more, but until you get to very specific levels, some of it just doesn't make any sense. And when you get there, it's just going to be the power of reading, anyways. Especially now that AI has come and destroyed it for everybody. Now that all humans are trying to catch up to computers, or at least have somewhat ability to contend with them. So this here, not too bad. Uh, I'd recommend just come back, keep it simple. This does leave a problem for black that black does have to fix when you are looking. Uh, keep your shape strong, and at whenever possible, create weaknesses for your opponents. So this is a cutting point. When there's a cutting point on the board, yes, the ladder is going to lead into a black stone, but this is going to give you something to aim for. As a stronger player, this is what we look at. If you ever wonder why you're losing some of your games when you're playing stronger players, the first thing we're going to do is when there's a cut, that's the only move that's on the board. So we're going to take it as best as we can. From here, black does have some possibilities. It's not going to lead to anything nice because if white gets a Hana here, it's not going to look good. So now this can be settled. Pretty bad shape. So that's why we'd want to settle for the other pattern instead. Not the best shape for black or white. Although there's a cut on the inside, it is not vital at this time. I guess it's going to be depending on whoever gets the Hane first. So I would say for black, keep following up with this shape. This is a very good shape to follow up with. You can do a double Hane here, and this leaves black in a very bad way. So in the event that black does ignore again, these Hanes are going to be incredibly destructive. It does leave a liberty shortage here. So if even if black comes in, this is a very heavy shape to have. This is typically what you want to avoid. And in this situation, it doesn't really do anything to fix it. So you can come into a move like this, create a nice little tiger's mouth, and you do get one eye out of it. It does leave a white with more potential here. Shape is kind of in that way. Just a simple connection does leave you in a slightly better light here, but now we're going to get territory for white on the fourth line, which is another thing you want to avoid. That's going to be a lot to come back from. It is pretty big in here if you're able to expand and keep it, but we know that's not always the case. White does have a very good approach here. This being weak, if black does come back with one more move to fix it, white's going to get the extra move against the corner, and this is not really a good shape to be in for black because yeah, you've lost Sente and now you're spending extra moves fixing shape. So now when you are going to choose your corner Joseki, you do want to choose it in such a way that's going to end up slightly better for you. And when possible, of course, with Sente. These are some pretty good approaches here. When approaching low like this, what we're looking at is trying to create a shape that does give you life. These stones aren't quite alive yet. Something that black can look into is trying to put pressure on them, sometimes sooner than later. So now white has life here. This is one of those things. Hopefully, if all goes as planned, it looks like it's been settled. White expands for life over here. This is pretty good. Create a little bit of a triangle here. Not going to say it's bad, but it does actually fix a lot of the problems that do exist here, except for the Hane that could happen over at the D6 again. I would recommend something a little bit different from here. If white's going to come in and ignore, you can use your somewhat presence here, although not quite strong yet. Force white along the sides. When white comes out, you can now develop your corner while putting pressure on white. And white is not completely in a good situation here. White should still have an extra move to try and secure things, and then you can come back and put pressure on this group now. This group still requires a lot to get all nice and cozy and comfy. So creating a two stone from here. It is good. It does press white along the second line. This is now white's just scrambling for life. And the exchange for second to fourth line territory is pretty good. Coming in here to extend is a little bit better for white because it does aim over here and it could help negate black's territory. White gets a nice corner enclosure. With the corner enclosure, I would say look at where the territory is. There's old Josekis where you can pop in and occupy a space like this just to help reduce the development for white. That does leave you in a little bit of a different situation here. And you're now building a bit more on the center. White is secured in the corner here. They will come under and reduce a little bit. But now it gives you a little bit more to potentially attack. Not quite dead, but you can influence this group a little bit and start developing towards the middle. And of course now the play is nice and loose. It's nice and spread out, gives you a lot of options. So yeah, so this is a little bit slow and it can cause some issues. If white chooses to come in, then they can cause a few issues. Now it does separate your groups. Good rule of thumb for attacking: divide and conquer. Divide and conquer is the absolute best way. The more groups your opponent has on the board, hopefully you don't have as many as your opponent, then the more that they're going to have to worry about. So that's why cut when you can cut. wedge, separates. Do what you can to keep as many individual groups as possible. Testing. There we go. This is a little bit on the small side. It does aim over here. Not still not too much to worry about because you can still come in underneath. There's still a lot of life space left for black. This is a very good fix now. It's not too early, and it is going to press white a little bit into the side. It does also create a little bit of a future problem over at B3 here, C3, as the development happens. This is very good to press down. I wouldn't say too problematic, but this is still going to cause some issues for white. Settling over here does leave a sente situation should black keep the press, and so for white, this would be a happy way to capture sente should black keep pressing. This is actually going to lead to more threats as well, and it's going to cause problems should a co-threat also pop up in the future. There's a lot of inside threats that can happen here. And with all these threats, it's not that you'd worry about being killed. It's just about how many moves you're going to lose when a co does pop up in the future, or if a co does pop up in the future. This is good, fixing a cutting point, because we now know exactly how devastating a cutting point could be. There's a couple ways of doing this. You can play out this way, so in the event of a ladder, you can ladder them into the side. This is also a slightly looser play, is popping out to protect these kind of cuts. And also creating, again, this shape. Yes, a peep may happen, but not really that devastating. It is helping develop you, and as you're developing, stones like this don't have much life yet. It's something that white would play towards or run with, but while white is running, then you could also start developing as well. And this development is going to be your territory as you give chase to these. Now that's also going to be a little bit contradictory because I also talk about every once in a while, depending on which side, it is good to have these extra stones in play. And these stones may not look like much now, but as the game develops, sometimes they can be in a strategic position, and it's better to be in the strategic position and have your stone there than, need a stone there, but now it's too late to do the peep because it's probably going to be overdeveloped. This corner is already alive. To extend from there, it would almost be better to approach just a little bit closer, because this is also the move that black wants to do to help expand territory. Otherwise, you could also come in underneath and start putting pressure on this group. There are numerous issues to fix with it. This group's alive, this group's alive, so now you can give just a little bit of chase. Black could get one eye in here, and this way you can start pressing out. This little bit of life here, a little bit of territory there, excuse me, it is not something that would necessarily have to be fixed immediately. So to answer two space, there's an answer with two space. We still have the glaring potential invasion here, which is a potential future problem. But capturing territory, it's a one-for-one move. Uh, if your opponent expands, you should expand. If your opponent attacks, you should attack, just to keep balance within the game itself. So this here, good poke. Um, the way it was utilized, not necessarily a bad thing, does create a little bit of an issue here. White could cut right away. This would help. Black's just going to develop into life here, so we have just enough room to keep going. And now This cutting stone living, not a lot of Agi left in the stone, still something to play towards. This does undercut a little bit of white's development, but with the reduction of black forcing the life, this wall is a very good exchange to have here. Likewise, black can come down this way, but this would be kind of a mistake. It's now kind of killing your own group, so you do have to kind of choose wisely in a situation like this. And the best thing to do for for black is to give up just that little bit here. These are a lot of required moves, so they are going to be forced. Black could then come out here and start a little bit of a counter-offensive, but white does have some pretty good shape after this. So this is good forcing moves. If you do see a forcing move, it is okay to take it earlier on, as black's developing over here. Although this stone did have some Agi in it, it does take it away, because this is one of the directions that white wanted to run. Now white's going to have to come out and look for support elsewhere. This is a good capping move. It's puts a lot of pressure on white now, and this is something that you don't see too often in double-digit Q games. Is that white's running, but what's most common is black trying to play right on top, and this becomes problematic because now the stronger white gets, the weaker black gets, even though black's getting stronger with moves like this. And what I like to see is when this move comes up, this is really in the true spirit of an attack. You want to stay as far away as possible. There's a couple different ways of doing it. You could also come up this way as well, start chasing upwards. And although this stone is losing some Agi, that's still not a problem because although this is getting a little bit compressed, it does still leave possibilities here for keeping the white group separated. Even if you have to throw away a stone or two. So now we can develop, there's a single eye here, black's developed into a slightly strong situation, and we have some cutting stones. And now what we have here is we have two groups against two groups, which is also very advantageous. Help develop your reading skills, and it dirties up the game a little bit, which is kind of, if you listen to the AI, apparently that's all the AI ever wants to do is just dirty up the game. Second line here, not bad. Uh, this is this is still kind of a glaring attack that's going on. To come back here might be a little bit too soon. If you're going to make the threat, might be better to just live with it, and this is going to help block as well. Uh, don't be concerned. White already has life in here. If you're concerned about 1 point, this is way too early in the game. Well, sorry, 2 points. Way too early in the game to be worried about it. If white wants to see this through, that's not a problem. Black is out, so even though there's one eye in here, there's still a lot of room to make eyes out here. But with this type of development, you now have this great wall of influence, and white still only has 3 stones. 3 stones with very few places to go. So this can help you keep a lot of pressure on there. This kind of does the same thing. We're worried about too many small groups here, and I wouldn't say that it is a problem, but again, what you want to see is you want to see the ability to pull away anything for white to run to. And as you develop over here, it's also going to help as further attacks here resume. If you're worried about things like this is 4 points. This is too early in the game to be worried about 4 points. I'm not saying that this was a bad sequence, but as you start letting white develop for you capturing 4 stones, this influence is then going to start poking towards future attacks there. So this is a good ignore. But now what you're looking at is that, yeah, this is one eye, this is two eyes. There's it's not going to take much now for white to start surrounding this group, forcing this. This is a good peep. It's a stone to have, and every once in a while you do want to have good stones in place. You could also further follow up directly here as well, and then come up. It does create a little bit of a bad agi situation, but if white's that concerned, give up a few stones in Sente, and then you can still proceed with your regular machinations of trying to develop, surround, and here it's very good territorial development. This is a strong wall, not much for cutting moves, although this ladder does lead into white. This is something that you would be aiming at fixing at later, even with a couple of forcing moves. There's a couple of Miyai in here. I would not necessarily worry about the immediate saves for white. So we'll say that's getting sacrificed. White plays, black's going to come out, one eye in here, and then start developing on the outside. Further, if black's not going to jump out right away, then likewise, come and place a couple of ladder breakers out here, just in case that white's thinking of looking at this. Also, with this little bit of a development, white's going to think, yes, you want to invade, but what your actual target's going to be is still these 4 stones. You still want to keep the amount of development out of them as much as possible. And yeah, white's going to start with a little bit of shenanigans over here and try and get things done, but it's still going to be very difficult to run. Eventually, if white does even capture these 2 stones, that's still only one eye. If you can pressure white into even just living small, the amount of development you should get out of it should be enough to tip it in your favor as far as black goes. Let's see. This move's not too bad. It does help seal up this little bit of a weakness for a cut here, and it is going to help aim towards bringing life back to these 2 stones. Black should ignore. Black is fairly developed here, but for white, it's now time to start looking at playing towards these stones. Not necessarily saving them per se. You should never try and save every stone that's on the board, but if you do have an investment, then you can actually play towards said investments as well. This is a fairly good extension. It does leave some options. White's going to come in fairly shallow here. I would say just err on the side of caution in life sometimes. I would play down or even play here. It is a fairly strong developed position for black as it is, and white may want to come across, but there's quite a bit to give up here with all this development, and then likewise it's still going to create a cutting point here that does have to be fixed. So white's going to have a lot of tough choices here. This is it does create a lot of dirty shape, but uh, although white's going to be able to run, there's going to be a few things that you want to look out for. These stones are not alive. These stones still have to run. This group not completely alive, and if white chases, white can come back with a peep here. And the entire point is, let's just get some stones in the area and hope that we could eventually escape with something. Because now this is in a situation where if white escapes, white's officially reduced. And this is good enough for white. It's not about let's kill everything. And the game, yeah, it is an aspect of the game. But the more aggressive you are and the more you aim to kill, the stronger your opponents to get. And the game does have that way of punishing greed. So here, That's fair, protecting the cut, but as you protect the cut, or the peep, white's already escaped. So white's gotten away with exactly what white wanted to get away with. So this is actually a very good reduction. The only thing that black can do is try and save just a little bit of face here. Let's keep some pressure on. So this peep is going to help secure your territory here, and then immediately cut. This immediate cut is very detrimental to this group. And then white should choose exactly what direction he wants to go for. I would say this would be a fair sacrifice. Black, if white comes in, black's actually quite cramped in here. So if white does choose the cut on this side, white also now has a lot more abilities to start pressuring. While we're expanding, we're working towards these and saving them. We can reduce this to, if all goes as planned, one eye. If white plays here, of course, black's going to play in here to try and conserve, but at the same time now, black does not have a lot of places to go. This is not a healthy way to run, and it's not going to end well. White's getting developed too strong here, and black's going to lose a lot of the initial momentum that it had. So when you think about it, coming all the way back to this move here, if all you do is worry about being connected, you're still in a good place. This is good for you. Um, I guess we refer to these as dragons. So the black dragon here, all nice and connected, still living in a nice uniform way, and then we create situations for white to maybe develop in a different way now. This is still not life yet. We still have still ways of pressuring both groups, and we're still sitting in a situation where white has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups on the board, 6 groups on the board. These are a lot of extra groups to have. Black sitting with 1, 2, 3. Hopefully this doesn't get separated in 4. With only 4 groups to worry about, black's going to be sitting happier here. So coming in underneath, taking that life is significantly better, and this is should be what you're looking out for as the game progresses as well. Is more than one way to live. That would be Miyai if black takes one, white takes the other, etc., etc. And it doesn't matter which one happens, it still balances out. So this becomes with a very interesting situation here. So white's not completely out here. White doesn't actually have much for eyes, other than the potential of coming in here. There would be a cut here later on, and white may net something down here. But if this lives, then white still has to come back and kill these 2 stones. White can run to this group here, which is great. You're going to start connecting, and instead of having 6 groups on the board, you'll have 5 groups on the board. But maybe develop by threatening these 2 stones. If you force black to connect, there's not a problem there, because now you can come back in, and it is also going to help seal up certain weaknesses, and black is still going to have to worry about these reductions in here. So that is a fair time to let it happen. It is Sente, and now we're attacking that single stone. If black gives it up, white gets an eye. This is a fair save. If you lose your cutting stones, then that's a lot of value lost. So yes, you do want to save those. But now we have a nice blobby shape here. So this is a good example of Miyai. So black can come in, white can still expand. Black does not have a lot of places to go here. This is going to create some issues, some quite significant issues. That was actually a fairly terrible cut. So maybe in a situation like this, it would be better to peep and then push through, and if all goes as planned, see if we can keep these groups separate. Because that would be the entire point of saving these cutting stones, is keeping them separate. Now, don't aim to kill both groups. If both groups collapse, that's an advantage for you. But if only one group collapses, then you're going to be that much farther ahead. And this actually would be a prime candidate for attack. So here, a peep that doesn't necessarily have to be saved, but likewise, these cutting moves are still going to create some issues. And we are still fairly connected here. So for black to make any move possible to try and get rid of it, try and aim at the weaker stones. Maybe try down here. Hmm, maybe not. A ko that doesn't do much. White's still connected. Well, not necessarily. Yeah, necessarily. So that was terrible. Ignore that. So this could be one of those things that if white ignores it, yeah, this is still a good connection. But this wall here will then be a bit more detrimental to white's development. And now you can safely cut with bamboo in here. This connection should be secure enough. Uh, and this would be a safe bet to say that if all goes as planned, this should cut. But I wouldn't have let it develop this far because take the point underneath, make sure you're alive first. Once you're alive, then attack to your heart's content. So in this situation here, white does stay connected. So we have the potential of an eye here, we have some fair eye shape over here, and white just needs to really expand one more over here to keep the eye shape going, to keep the battle going. And there's black's not going to be able to take them all. So this is good. This cuts off the ability to run and reduce that eye. So now we're a bit more secure here. That's just a quick forcing move. So now we're getting into endgame. There's a lot of forcing moves that can happen here. Uh, Black can still live comfortably over here. Don't come up so high. Maybe a little bit lower like this. This is a fair clamp. But yeah, black is in a little bit of trouble here. You spent so much time attacking this white group. The white group became strong, connected. It's probably not going to have any trouble connecting over here, which would then leave only 3 or 4 white groups on the board. And now black's completely separated. As black gets separated like this, you are going to be in a lot more trouble. You are not in a comfortable shape over here. So it might be best to come back now and start fixing up some of these shapes before you start pressing. There's not a lot of development here, so by coming in here, you're not reducing much, but you're just leaving more bad shape for yourself. And this bad shape here is, well, white's more than happy to cut. And of course, white should have just taken there. This would have been a bit more beneficial. Black is not in black is not in a good shape over here. But at least one eye, 2 eyes shouldn't be too bad. In case of emergency, you can come back out over here before that. You could still make yourself a nice reducing move over here. And don't forget, you still have some cutting points in here to exploit. So this would actually be sente for black to just come in and do a quick reduction as well as we get closer and closer to endgame. Still not too sure what this was, L18. If you can capture, just capture when you can capture. This is the good old double tap. It's don't leave anything to chance. It's nice to try things every once in a while. And yes, this is just a game, but as it is just a game, as liberties decline, suddenly these two stones could then come back to life and you're capturing races. And right here, this is another example. These direct contact moves are going to create nothing but problems no matter who plays them. This is a good peep to have, but before that, come down just a little bit lower. And now white can't survive this. So the cut's just not going to work. Black can stay all connected here. Yeah, create the bamboo, create the peep. It's not going to do that much more. And here we go. So now we have black cell connected again. We're not worried about white being killed here. The only advantage to this is white's going to only live with about 2, 3, 4 points. But the entire point of this wasn't to gather, 100 points in the middle. All it was to reduce all of black's chances to get territory over here. So this development over here, as you see later on in the game, once things get connected, that was enough. That's all that was necessary uh, to essentially to wreak that much havoc within the group. So this is now a terrible situation to be in. So there was a situation where all of this used to be connected. There would have been no reason for this to be disconnected. There would have been one group here. Even this was connected enough before some additional development happened. But even if you wanted to call it one, two, and then three groups, Black was sitting in a very happy place. And because of all of these cuts that happened, uh, it's it's now created that much more trouble where Black is now going to be scrounging for that second eye. That one eye is good to have. So let's fix this shape. So this is a very good place to start fixing. And now if white comes in, these stones do get activated, make a bit of a small sacrifice, and there's not much that white's going to be able to do in here. The ladder is going to get broken over there. So now we're connected. Sure, we sacrificed a couple of points. You know what? 4 points for life, worthwhile sacrifice. So let's keep this connected. We still know that we can be connected under here. And then let's just come back and fix this shape over here. It's not going to go anywhere as far as killing goes, but you are going to save that much more later on, and you're also going to get a good end game move in here. If white plays elsewhere, like this is, these are very good shapes to keep your opponent in, although they aren't pressing now. They will be pressing in the near future, and then eventually coming back to start fixing these problems. If this was completely cut off, not saying that there was a kill in here, but even if there was a kill in there, this would just be those couple of extra moves in the event of a future ko. So end game, not bad. This does. This peep wouldn't do much. White's not making a lot of territory here now. There's not a lot of profit. Having it seal up doesn't matter. So if white does play this just to grab that extra little bit of territory, uh, this is this is an interesting point of contention. Is what would be bigger? Black gets nothing, or black's going to get 4 points. I would say take the 4 points as black. Let white come out. This doesn't do much because this is already dead and connected. And then you just have to worry about staying connected with everything else. Uh, at this point, there's not a lot of points left. This is just the end game calculation of what's going to be biggest here. And of course, you don't want to lose anything. So moves like this aren't going to do much other than capture that few points for white. At the moment, you do get Sente for black. What do we have? So yeah, come in here. White can reduce. White should take the points. Consider it settled. And a little bit of once Sente is captured, then we have a great move here for white. Now it's going to be okay to start poking in and do your endgame calculations. So not a lot left over. This is still going to be a fair size, some fair territory for black, but in the end, the board is essentially settled. So right at the very beginning through the middle, I got to say overall black did have an interesting lead. Black did incredibly well. White did make a phenomenal comeback with the cutting points. So spend an extra few minutes, do a little bit of extra reading, and you're going to see a much better development in your game just by making those few adjustments, just by making your life over here, cutting when you can cut, and just keep as separated as possible. So that was a review for Papavero 13K over on OGS, and I do thank you for the request. That was a very phenomenal game to review, and there was a lot that got included in there. That's what I do like to see. The next one coming up, I did do one for Jill yesterday after we played a game, and Jill had another game that happened later on. So let's get that loaded up here. So this is Jillgoodgal 12K of OGS against the Whiskey Jack, which is one of my favorite birds. We do have some out here, and when you are visiting our Whiskey Jacks, they do have that wonderful bravery where they'll just come down and share a meal with you. They are very non-aggressive. They won't buzz you at all, and they will. They're going to be your friends as long as you have cookies and French fries. So this game was played yesterday. We did do a little bit of discussing regarding this one previously. When dealing someone with like Jill, she is a very talented opponent, very fun to have around. And she's actually taught me quite a bit, especially with opening theory. It's not something I've had a lot of time to study lately. But as we do get into discussions, there's a lot more that pops out. And then when we start watching pro games, she's very, very good at this. So you'll notice typically within the first 60 to 100 moves, things go incredibly well. And then from there, this is when a lot of the review tends to start. Because it's that middle game calculation that does get a lot of people, and this is what we want to correct. So this is one of my more favorite old school styles. This is actually this is the Joseki that I'm most familiar with, but it's probably quite severely depreciated now thanks to the AI's evaluation of things. But they say Pinocchio is worth 30 points, and this is actually a very good starting shape to have, and it is going to play well with the surrounding stones. So this would be something that I would say go for. If white does the peep, the problem is this is going to leave some pretty crummy shape for white now. This is not a shape that white wants to be in. So the peep is actually more of a trap here, and you'll notice that when some weaker players are playing some stronger players, when we make shape, we're not intentionally making bad shape, but we're going to make shape that's going to try and lure you into making a mistake, because we know that being situated like this, that we're probably in a better situation to attack and kill than you are to potentially defend these three stones. And at this point, I would say just let those stones go, play towards them later. And if black wants to make four moves trying to kill it, by all means, let black make those four moves, because it's going to take a lot of moves just to capture these three stones. Oh, let's do this. So yeah, so this is the, and then if we cut on the other side, essentially it's going to be kind of the same thing, but this shape here could be just a little bit more attackable in the future. This is not the kind of decision you want this early in the game of what you want to save. And if you do save the outside group here, then this would be a bad choice for black. Black actually did have the advantage here. So black's going to want to avoid something like this happening because white gets a pretty good lead, and this is now slightly overdeveloped for this early in the game. So now when it comes to this opening, this is something I'm not too familiar with. If this is an AI variation or not, I'm not 100% sure. All I know is that for very early in the game, Jill does have some fantastic shape. We try and fix that. This would be a recommendation. Uh, we essentially settle nice and even. White gets a corner, some territory. Black gets some territory. Third line, fourth line. We're happy to just leave it at this, and then White can come by for their approaches or invasions later on. Uh, I do believe the AI does rank this one just a little bit lower, but that doesn't mean that all AIs are going to see it the same way. To prevent, what are we preventing here? There's going to be some cuts, and this cut here, although not really developed, it's not something that's going to be that problematic. This would then lead to the possibility that White can do a double Hane. This is one of my favorite things that I learned quite a few years back, and it wasn't really played at the Q level at the time, and now it's actually grown in popularity. The double Hane is incredibly powerful because it doesn't really matter where your opponent cuts. They're not necessarily going to be getting something. Hey. So if black comes in on the bottom, there's more cutting shapes over here. Black's going to have to fix, white's going to come down, white's going to capture. So black's not going to want to save on that side. So that would be a mistake. Black comes out this way. Now what we have is white's running on the fifth line, and now this is incredibly happy. This is a very happy situation to be in. For white, yes, black is getting some development over here, but there's still some problems. There's still some cuts in here. So this double Hane is helping fix your shape as white, but now it's going to put black into just a little bit of distress here. You could eventually set up a potential snapback over here. If black's going to run, white's going to chase. There's there's uh, there's only one false eye here. Still something that's well, not that soon, but this is still one of those things that black's going to want to fix sooner than later. But some pressure can still be kept on here. This is not a happy place to be. So this double Hane here, it really is an absolutely destructive force of nature. And as soon as you save, you don't want to really start this soon. But at the same time, if black pulls back too soon, you're sitting in a pretty good situation here. There's a lot of cutting points. There's a lot of ways to destroy, more ways to destroy black than there are ways to destroy white. But I would say take over this way, keep your territory along the fifth line, and you're going to be sitting happy because you're now that much farther ahead. So this is actually very common now. Not saying that this is a very good shape to leave. This shape does have numerous problems, but I do believe the AI is going to agree with this one. And this is very popular now for an AI. It's jump in the corners, take them as soon as you can. There's quite a few variations that we can go with. Uh, Jill's probably going to try and make that fancy flying dagger shape out of this one. Very beautiful Joseki. The other one is that I do enjoy is just keep it this way. Just keep it simple because this is now a lot of extra development. This is a lot of extra territory to have. Black can happily come in over here, and uh, let's just uh, let's just develop the same. Like this would have been a very happy exchange for black. Like this is just phenomenal. Once you choose your direction of play, once you choose your Josekis well, it's not necessarily necessary to memorize every single Joseki that's out there, but just realize what's going to give you the biggest advantage. Ladder here. If you wanted to do the ladder breaker on the other side, great. Come press up a little bit. Black's going to come in. You could still come up on top. And you're still surrounding a lot of large territory. White's going to have to come back and fix. You surround a little bit, and this is now come into Cosmic style. And if I know Jill, this is going to be something that she's going to be looking towards because she likes to conquer boards early on. So I guess this is just a slightly different variation of the exact same thing. The extra move does add some extra security here. Either way, you're going to be looking at peeps and ladders and things like that. And in this one, yeah, the third stone here was ranked by the AI to actually be the better move in this situation. But hey, I'm a risk taker. I'm a go-getter. I want my opponent to invade. Let's see what kind of destruction and wanton mayhem we can keep on the board. Because if there's not wanton mayhem and there's no atomic Tesujis, then what's the point of playing the game? So this is settled nice and early, settled nice and conveniently. White does have a pretty good move here. Comes back and does this Shamari in the corner, which is necessary because if black does come in, then you see what kind of development happens. But actually, potentially for a better move on the board, because we already have this development in here, and this actually isn't a very strong shape. This is one of my favorite Tesujis to have. It is going to force your opponent to play in, and but this is going to lead to a lot of other destruction. So yeah, these stones are gonna this stone's going to get cut off, but you're not concerned about this one stone. This is your sacrifice. This is a fun sacrifice to have. If black's going to try and do anything fancy, white now has the beginnings of shape. Like this is here we go. We got your first potential eye here. Black's going to have to spend a lot of extra moves cutting it down. A very fun invasion to have. And I guess this is going to be your choice for style of play. Do you want to be aggressive? Do you want to be defensive? I'm not saying that this is the better move to make here. Uh, for aggressive players, yeah, jump in, make your sacrifice, have some fun with your opponent, and make things happen. You want a slightly calmer game. This is fine too. I do enjoy coming in for the Shamari. Shamari is a very fancy thing to have. Uh, by AI standards, they actually recommend one extra space here. This is going to create some other variations, but this is still very secure. This is very popular on the pro circuit. It's very difficult to invade. There are going to be a couple of variations to this one. I'm not saying any of them are bad, but when this happens, the next thing that's going to happen is black's just going to come in here and capture a lot. Like this is a lot to give up, and now it's going to make it that much more difficult for this to be effective because now black already has this cutoff. Uh, when white tries to live here, it's going to be incredibly difficult because there's not a lot of places to run with the extra developments. There's a lot undeveloped here, a lot undeveloped there, and this is going to create nothing but future issues. So this is a very good secure place to have. Uh, if you're going to develop something, you may as well save it. And now this completely negates this invasion here. There's no possible way this is going to work. So this is a very well placed stone, but it does also give white a chance to develop larger as well. As white's Whiskey Jack is 11Q, so was just one stone stronger than Jill. This would have been a very good place to begin with. This is still not quite developed. Black takes the Shamari. White's going to come down here and maybe capture something big. Who knows? If the cut's going to happen, we kind of cut on the side that we don't want. And now we're going to be creating a little bit of a capture race, another Panoki on the board. This Panoki would have been incredibly powerful playing with these stones. A little bit to give up. I'm not saying this is completely done for yet, but it's not going to be easy life or happy life. So this would be, I would say, the first significant mistake for white. Up until now, white's actually played quite a phenomenal game. But with all the development going, I would say the biggest problem with this is white's alive, white's alive, white's alive. There's not a lot to worry about here. So let's jump in. Let's create more mayhem. Take the other corner. This is very popular for AIs. AIs are more than happy to just say, you know what, let's grab the other corner now and see what happens, or at least make approach towards it. So there's a couple different aims here. If we're going to aim on this side, you're going to give a bit more development to black here, but likewise, the development for white is also going to be quite massive, and you need that to counteract the extra territory that's over here. And with the good old line of scrimmage here, it's not that you can't jump out, but now if white jumps in here, white can run here, white can run there, white can run back down here. There's a lot of possibilities for this evasion. Let's see. White comes in on this side. Uh, I would choose this Joseki here. I would choose something nice and easy. The reason I would choose this is because white doesn't have a lot of room to live here. And the more time that white's going to spend living, the more time black can expend trying to expand and take more territory, which would then negate this Shamari. So this would be choose your Joseki wisely. Having the extra support here, you can also come in this way. This is a very interesting situation that I've seen pop up. Sometimes, and this is what I reviewed in the previous game, sometimes it's just easier. Stay connected. Not that everything is bad or everything is good. Uh, Black gets the corner, white gets a little bit over here. A lot of extra stones just to capture this one. But now black has Sente, and with black having Sente with such a well-developed shape, I would be significantly less concerned about anything that pops up. This is very invadable. Because this is where the territory is, I would just jump in nice and deep. Make something happen in here. Ooh, how did this happen? So this creates a very interesting situation. This is an incredibly vulgar move. You can step back a little bit, do something a little bit different here. This would be more than acceptable. Not saying you have to come back and peep. This is a forcing move for white, and having a one extension from two stones, or a two space extension from two stones, this is very helpful shape to have. This is also going to give white Sente, and white can still come back and play another very large move. It doesn't matter which side that black takes. Black comes over here, white's going to come back. Black comes in here, and then white's going to extend over here. There's this is a very versatile move to have. You could also come in on a third line. This just makes it a little easier. So now we have a good chase. White can live, black's gonna run. Very good reduction, but it's done in Sente. As soon as you jump into the middle of something, there's going to be nothing but problems. This is not necessarily a bad way to do it. It's still nice and secure. Black's going to have to fix a lot of problems anyways due to this little bit of a Joseki issue over here. Cutting on this side was the right way to cut. Um, White's running into nothing. White does not have any place to go here. Could have some fun with this one if White wants to take that side. We now have a little bit of a. Let's just make a little bit of a sacrifice, just for the sake of sacrificing, just to have something alive here. We now have a fun situation, a fun chase happening. This is going to dirty up the game quite a bit. Troublesome part is ladder, and even if the ladder doesn't work, is it going to be possible for for black to scrape out just enough life here? And if the life does happen, then we're sitting in an interesting situation. Let's see. I read something different earlier. Black connects, white has to come in. So let's come in this way. So say white just comes in here. That ladder's not going to work. Black can still come in here and still create just a little bit of havoc. Destroy a couple of stones. Oops. But the well-placed stone here is just let it go. Come in and start developing on this side. Trying to develop and protect 10th line territory, I don't think is a very reasonable option to have. So if you sacrifice a little bit over here, black still has this great development over here. This is going to be about 25 to 30 points. And to keep pressure on this, black will eventually be able to come in with a move like this and uh, help this force get developed, and then maybe pick up another 20 to 30 points over there. But in the meantime, start developing on this side. You know what? Learn to make a sacrifice. Give up a little bit of board here. This wasn't territory anyways. Could have been. But if you're going to get too greedy, the problem with being extra greedy is that greed is going to get punished, and greed's going to get punished early on. So let's start developing. Let's have some fun with it. White can come in. Black's going to come up. White's going to come up. Black's going to expand. No matter what happens here, I would say nothing here should die. And it would be great to see these kind of reductions happen. Like this is well, a terribly dirty situation. So not a bad situation to be in, but now we have a terribly important stone here. Capture. There's a good reason for the capture. This. Although we do have an interesting situation here, we now have a cut that's not going to work. We have stones that are falling on the weak side. Could we capture on that side? Potentially not. Yeah, so now we're stuck with a situation where you've invested a lot here. Very good investment. This is not a bad investment at all. But by leaving just that one stone is kind of destroying the purpose here. Yeah, white come in, but white didn't read that through completely. So from here, uh, capture happened. That's fantastic. If you're going to develop in two directions. Develop an eye here, and this here could potentially be, but huh, apparently I have a tornado warning. Let's just hope I don't blow away. Okay, so now black still has one eye here. Black's going to be out on this side. These stones are having a lot of issues. Something's going to have to get sacrificed. This would have been slightly better development. If you're not going to develop on the bottom side, definitely develop on the top side. Too far. So come in this way. The very best thing you want to do to your opponent is try and take away eyes whenever possible. This is essentially how you're going to attack. Uh, so now black is overdeveloped here, and now black has to run. There will be this should be easy enough to almost make your second eye, maybe coming over here. And even if you just let black live small, it's not a problem. Don't aim to kill absolutely everything on the board. If you keep aiming to kill, chances are this is why you're losing a fair portion of your games. This little bit of development here, yeah, you let white live small, but now white's developed in a very interesting direction here. Very good strong wall here, ability to develop. Another issue that you see going on is these attacks that happen. These attacks happen very early in the game, yet there's all this extra development on the board. So if you develop earlier, then it would help you design your attacks later instead of designing your attacks now and going, oh, wait a minute, how about I go start to try and develop something? Not always the best way to do it. So now this leaves the tough situation where black's going to know what you're going to want to do. So let's force white to live over here. Well, we're forcing white to live over there. Let's start cutting these off because this is going to be that much more territory. Black doesn't have to worry because black's alive. So keep developing while you can develop. Here, white's going to make a terrible decision. There's not a lot here. How about jumping up here? White already got fourth line territory in here, uh, potentially developing further. Now we have to worry about saving stones like this. You can aim to this side and reduce, or you could aim to this side and start developing territory. So Whiskey Jack is actually in a very advantageous situation here. And I wouldn't say that, like even with a stone like this eye not completely secure. We have one eye in here, and yeah, we could probably develop quickly. Not a problem. Now this is just solidified white. Let this happen. So by coming down below here, this is not a situation that you want to be in. Um, so now we see another issue. Black is attacking with a good, strong, living side. What happens as black attacks? White gets stronger over here. I would actually take it one more. Come on out. So now you have to definitely make sure this is going to live. You better have made sure that you made yourself a living group here, because this is going to be about the only good exchange that happens. If black gives this up, black better be making all the territory over here. This better not get invaded. As such, make sure you're doing a lot of reducing, because it's going to be tough to pick up from something like this. So cut when you can cut. Does come in handy sometimes, doesn't come in handy other times. This comes in handy because of the immediate liberty shortage here. The snapback, this is now helping black develop. So this is a very good series of attacks. You're attacking in such a way that's developing all your eye space. Uh, Cutting stone, if there's a cutting stone, capture the cutting stone. Cutting stone is going to be completely necessary because this is just what's holding everything together. This here being so well placed, although white can come in and peep, that's going to be the maximum that he's going to be able to do against this group. Where before that stone there, if white jumped in, then white could well play towards escape. If all goes as planned, all white wanted to do was make this a false eye. One eye here, false eye there, or one eye here, false eye there. So from here, if you're going to invade with something that's going to have a little bit of a purpose. So this is very good to have. This would actually force this move here, because this would be the ladder breaker. You don't want to have something in a way where you're going to create a lot of potentially bad shape. Now white can jump out and see if a good reduction can happen. Before that, how about we happily peep, and then we jump out. So now we have a stone there, stone here, perfect shape. And what's white going to do? So you keep developing as you go, keep expanding, and uh, black can try and come back and capture this, but there's still some very good shape that can be made. There's still some very good chasing that can happen. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 white groups, 1, 2, 3, 4 black groups. These are playing very close together. These are going to be connected soon. There's going to be a lot less to worry about. But yeah, if you're just going to throw in an arbitrary stone, throw in an arbitrary stone that has a purpose. This one, black doesn't even have to respond to it to try and capture the stone, because the ladder's still going to work in black's favor. And now black can completely ignore. This is essentially a thank you move. it could have some purpose. There is some potential for this stone itself, but black doesn't have to worry about it because now black's just saying, hey, well, you know what? I'm probably going to capture that anyways, so let's try and put some pressure on this group because it is a bit larger for now. As this group gets chased, it's now going to start negating all the development for the white group over here. Because white developed down instead of up, it's going to be much easier for black to start reducing. So here we go, double Hane, very nicely positioned. Uh, Pressure is kept on, very good pressure to have. And this stone here, Miai, so whatever happens with that doesn't matter. Come back, I would say even come back here and threaten this stone a little bit. Put some pressure on these groups. Or just simply capture, because now uh, nothing but issues for this group, nothing but cutting points. Very devastating here. If white wants to live, not a problem. Take the stone now. But black's developed massive potential here. Like this would just be a very devastating blow for the development of white. Great that white lived, but the problem with both of these situations that if you were attacking in a way like this, if white makes the extra move so he doesn't have to worry about it anymore, black did a fantastic job developing all of this over here. And it's going to be very easy for black to secure this. It'll be very difficult for white to invade. And even with a couple of well-placed moves here, where's white going to go? Like, this is a very tight situation. And black also has the option to come back, potentially capture this stone, can capture that stone, give up this if necessary to help keep the pressure on this. So in a situation like this, fair development, but you shouldn't be worrying about developing yet. Keep attacking. Keep the pressure on. The more you keep pressuring your opponent, the easier it's going to be for you to develop later on, and you're going to get that many more moves. So start with forcing your opponent into bad shape. Absolutely great way to start with bad shape. And even if you started up here, it's essentially going to be the same thing. But now, if white doesn't develop in here, we're just going to say, okay, now white wants to develop from there. We have some issues. Uh, Very detrimental for white. Because this is going to completely negate all the potential ice space that happened. Black is actually still positioned in a fair situation because of the ladder here. Yeah, that might be a little bit deep. But still, even if black expands over here, there's now not a lot of places over there to expand. White takes the two eyes, but black's happy because black's sitting in a very good position on both sides here. And now that's how many moves got expended here? 24 moves got expended, so we have 6, 12, 13, about 15 white stones. For what? 3 points. That's it. What did black develop? Well, let me get my calculator out. Black developed that. Yeah, there's going to be invasion at the 3-3. The 3-3 is going to live. Not a problem. But now, don't worry about this peep. Come back. Black jumps in at R17, and there we go. We have it's completely settled now. White's done. Where's white going to come back from this? So overall, a move like this is I guess black's version of a thank you move. Yeah, it does help develop the corner a little bit, but it could still be invaded. This completely destroyed all the agi that was there for black to start attacking with. A little bit unfortunate for black, fortunate for white, because there was a lot of destruction that was going to happen just from cutting and capturing a stone. Now what black is saying, I guess, is that there's no way that white's going to invade. So this kind of does the same thing that the other one did, but with the other one, you're developing in Sente. Here, 017 is kind of a Gote move. Yeah, great. You're getting a lot in the corner, but I would rather have done it by forcing the development here and then coming back for one move instead of doing 1-2 moves and letting your opponent run the board. Ooh, terrible choice of attack. Yeah, just come in. If if white's that concerned about one stone, this is a very secure way of developing over here. And don't worry about a cut over here. Still get to connect over there. White's going to be able to scramble along the third line here for some very good profit. And if you were that concerned about life over here, just come in and make it now because remember, this is no longer going to be an issue. So black can still live happily here. Just stick with the simplest possible option. So this is the 30Q move right here. This is the kind of a thank you move from black. Congratulations, you've spent a move to almost capture 2 points. White comes in, very good developmental choice. Still can't say that something's going to get captured here, but now black has to scramble for this little bit of a mistake. So pretty good life, still have cutting points. Black lived, white lived, but right here, very big mistake. Just by if you count the board, and this is what you're going to see in most of the double-digit Q games. You're saving stones. Only save the stones if that's the only way you could live. So when you read it through, if uh, if white played in here saying, "Yep, I'm going to kill this entire group," ignore it. There you go. Black's alive. Treat it as Miai. But if you don't have to, well, wait, well, it is Miai right now. So white plays over here, black plays over there. So it's an interesting situation that shouldn't have developed the way it did, because this entire reduction here did put white back into contention to win the game, and I don't recall the outcome of this game. Oh, black won. Oh, black won anyways. We're gonna see why. Very interesting situation pops up later on, if I do recall. So here, a little bit later, things that happen. Great, we're attacking, we're forcing bad shape. Yeah, I don't like bad shape in that direction. I like bad shape in this direction because these 3 stones are incredibly weak after this. And uh, white comes in to correct. Black's now going to come up and keep the pressure on over here. Black has good option to run over there. That's the kind of direction of play that we want to see is where you're going to run to. Uh, bamboo, fantastic choice. I'm not a big fan of triangles unless they're good triangles. I call that a good triangle. And this is the most amazing thing I've seen in a while. This was a very tough situation to read through. And I would say you have one chance. This is your chance. Here's your Miai. Take your life. Right there. You now have 2 eyes. Just take it, accept it, and don't do anything more. It's just so here's the problem that happened. White attacked on that side. Black was already alive. Came down, forcing moves. Not a problem for the forcing moves. But this didn't do anything. And what does black do? Where are we? A little bit of development. And we have an interestingly happy situation here. And white makes a mistake. Quite a grave mistake, actually. Because now, with this move in here, there's a liberty shortage on a couple of sides. So white comes here, black plays there, white plays black there, and wow, look at that. Apparently we're not allowed to commit suicide. And so this here, it's not even a ko for anything. because white has now captured that complete center group. All those stones that you invested were now captured because of a throwaway over here. A thank you move. E14 was a thank you move to black. There was a little bit going on, and then white saw an opportunity. And that opportunity, sure, it did cost a little bit up there. That's a very happy sacrifice. Very well placed stones. A very well done sacrifice. Sure, white lived through here, but if there was no other way out for black, kill. And it was a very good kill. The next best thing, and I don't even think that would have worked, would it? Yeah, it would have worked. Or not. Yeah, so there was no way to save this one. This was this was definitely an advantageous situation for black. This is your the semi-I here just turned into a capturing race that should have ended up in these black stones dying, but because you ignore this, this is all that that you had to do. Uh, White lives in a situation like this, and you know black's gonna have to struggle to get out of here. So yeah, sure, the struggle could have happened, but greed got punished, and this was a very good punishment of greed. And I do believe it still could have worked this way. Yeah, I would say this would be a very interesting situation. This is a very terrible ko for white to have, and it could eventually end up the same way. White has to expend that much more to try and live. So take your life when you can take your life. Not take your life as in suicide, but get your two eyes. You take your two eyes, and from that, this could have been much different because with Blackstone's dead and White alive through here, we're talking about a very different game here. And where did we go from here? So now we have some interesting development that happened. Uh, Sometimes you just have to give up a few stones. Uh, let the sacrifice happen. This is not necessarily. Yeah, this is not really going to be forced afterwards, but you save a lot of territory just by giving up. You give up 6 stones here, and those 6 stones, that was it. Uh, Black spent a lot of extra moves here, trying to do something, and that something actually didn't happen well. It created a very sticky situation because this is very bad shape to be in. False eye, even if white ignored that one, came down here. We have, yeah, you have a pretty tight situation to be in, and it's. I'm not even worried about this being captured. You know what? Life is life. But this is a very big reduction. There was so many stones invested in this entire group here, and it all gets negated because of trying to save every single stone. So saving every single stone is not it's not a good option to have. There was nothing but bad shape through here, unfortunately for black. And uh, with this capture here, still sitting in a fun position because we have a misread. Yeah, that's not too problematic. This actually worked out well for black, still being able to have something over there. So yeah, white gets small life, fantastic, not a problem. But this is the last lesson in this game. Uh, Yosei aside, is this situation here. Big mistake happened. And if anybody is familiar with these corners, this this is the worst point that you've ever made on the board. The absolute worst point because black made a very good judgment call here, jumped in, and this actually turned into, I believe, Kaputski. Yeah, so now it's the 4, so no matter what happens, this is going to die. All of that just to save this 1 point. Just for 1 point. So this is going to be a very... this is Joseki / life and death, I would call it. Yeah, this is actually part of a corner that's developed naturally in the more modern Josekis and some older Josekis. And from here, I believe we had the possibility of... No, that one was death. There were some Sekis in here someplace. Yeah, because if black comes in, that's not going to work. Black comes in that way. White's going to come in here. So there were some possibilities here, but this actually turned out a very wrong sequence of plays here. So when you come all the way back to a situation like this, that's not the bad move. Play in. Take your second move. Take your living shape. Yeah, you know what? Fine, you gave up 1 point, but for that 1 point, you saved this entire corner. And from there, that was the rest of the game. Not just this portion in the middle. Yeah, this portion in the middle was quite detrimental to white, but this was the last nail in the coffin. White resigned. Black played an overall fantastic game. White did have a very strong potential through the game, but likewise, as you can see, that's in the Q-type games, the more attacks that happen, the stronger you're making your opponent. The more you attack your opponent, the stronger you make them. The more they attack you, the stronger that they make you. And because of that, uh, just try and keep things a little bit distant. That's what we saw in the first game. And in this game here, just knowing where your life is. Like this was some very good examples of how on the bottom black could have died, how in the middle white could have lived. And practice some of those things. Read a little bit deeper, and when you're playing your games, try and find people that would at least grant you a 30-minute clock. Like play a little bit slower. This game could have been played a little bit faster. What do we have for information on this one? Ah, this was a correspondence game. As a correspondence game, you had all the time in the world. Uh, 1 day per move. So slow down, take your time, keep an eye on it. If this was a live game, take like 30 minutes, 10 stone 25 Canadian Byoyomi, or maybe 1 or 2 minutes per move Fisher time. Spend all this extra time to learn how to read because these readings are essentially what saves your life later on. So I do thank you much for the recommendations of games. This has been a spontaneous review for Papavero and Jillgoodgal. Two very good players, and their opponents, Whiskey Jack, and I cannot remember Papavero's opponent, but very well played. I do thank you very much for letting me do this for you, and I hope you do view these videos. And anybody else who wants a review for any games, just hit me up with a message over on OGS. I am He Who Walks in Shadows. I recently just broke one down again. I did it once, so almost 10 years ago. Stopped playing for a while. Now I'm back, and I'm hoping that I can teach a lot of beginners to come up and be SDQ or even Dan players.